Hello and welcome in everybody to another edition of the Pens Iceberg. I'm your host, Casey Stamp, alongside my partner, Jason Kaczynski. How you doing, Jason?
Oh, pretty good, Casey. A little bad luck tonight. So it's been some bad luck for the Pens last couple of games.
Surely the last 5 games, some bad luck, not just on the scores, but on the injury front as well. We'll get into that a little more later. And we certainly hope that all of you had a great holiday season. Jason, I hope that you had a great holiday season as well. Now it's right back to hockey, and we'll have a great show for you this evening. We'll be discussing, of course, the game analysis tonight against the Ottawa Senators and what the Pens can do to kind of end this losing streak and get out of this funk. We'll also be talking about James Neal and the possibility for the tenure and amount of his next contract. And as always, we'll finish up with some game analysis and game predictions. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Pens trying to end a 4-game skid tonight against the Ottawa Senators. First period, Pens looked sharp early, but Craig Anderson was sharper, just stopping everything in the first. Meanwhile, Chris Neal found the back of the net on the other end, making it a 1-0 game. And then minutes later, Bobby Butler would score off a beautiful feed from Nick Foligno. Jason, Brent Johnson, need I say more? What is his future with the Pens at this juncture?
Well, his future is he's in a contract year. Unfortunately for him, he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, and Ray Shero, he'll be 35 this year. I'm sure Ray Shero is taking note of his performance so far. The season he's been great the last two years, 10-6 and 3-5, 13-5. Really noticeable last season in the second half of the year to spell Marc-Andre Fleury. But, he's 2-4 this year. His goals against average has gone up a full point. His save percentage is down. It's in the 85 range. He's not doing what the Pens need a backup goalie to do, which is to not lose you games and just to keep you in it. And he's been mediocre at best and horrible at worst at times this year. They need him to step up.
And certainly right now he's not providing Marc-Andre Fleury with a whole lot of relief rest-wise, as Marc probably thought he was going to be getting more of a rest tonight than what he was. Second period, an early goal for the Sens. Jason Spezza gets it past Brent Johnson, and then that would be all she wrote for Johnny. Marc-Andre Fleury would replace him. And this is after playing 9 straight games, actually more than 9 straight games, because the previous Sens game, Brent Johnson was also pulled and Fleury had to come in. Minutes later, Milan McCulloch would appear to score, but then when you took a close look at it, it appeared that the puck was directed in by the skate of McCulloch. Now, anyone who follows our Twitter, I'm sure we all know Jason's opinion of the call already, but take us through the decision and through the goal itself. What did you think of the call?
Well, initially they called it a goal on the ice, which at the speed it's going, I don't mind. But the war room in Toronto, I understand, had a full slate of games tonight and were understandably busy. But however, you do have to get the call right. In the rule book, it clearly states the puck may not be directed in with a distinct kicking motion, and I guess that term has been subjective. It seems with this call, it's determined by the officials in the war room. He didn't make it. He didn't kick it forward, but he angled his skate. There was really no reason for him to move his skate at all, and unless he was going to kick it to his stick and then put it in. But it was clearly directed in, and it would have made it a much different game for the Pens. Going into at the end of the second period, going into the third, being down 3-1 versus 4-1. A little bit more easier hill to climb, if you could say that. But not a good call, and they got it wrong tonight.
And I would absolutely say that this year, and this isn't me being a homer, this is just me, giving my honest, unbiased opinion, is that the Pens have really been the recipient of some bad officiating this year. A ton of goals called off this year. I'm not sure what the record is for most goals called off in the season. I don't know if they keep things like that on record, but certainly the Pens would have to be close to it. A ton of goaltender interference type of calls, called off goals. James Neal's had a few of those this year. He might be in the scoring lead if not for that. But and certainly some of that officiating has come on Pens home ice. I'd say actually the majority of it. But some life from the Pens in the second, as at 11-14, Evgeny Malkin will score his 17th of the year. Really been such a great season thus far for Gino. And the second period would end with the Sens up 4-1. Third period, more of the same. Milan McCulloch doubling it up, making it 5-1, which of course would be your final score. So 5 in a row dropped by the Pens. When we return here, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the ways that the Pens can move out of the slide and get back into contention in the Atlantic Division and, of course, the Eastern Conference. So stay tuned. We're going to have more ahead for you on the Pens Iceberg. Welcome back. So as we left off there from our game analysis, we were discussing the fact that the Pens are currently in a 5-game slump. Injuries to a lot of our key players at this point. Of course, everybody knows about Sidney Crosby and Chris Letang, Jordan Staal, now going to be out for a while. So a total lack of offensive production. Jason, right now the Pens are in dire straits, out of the playoff picture. What can be done to resurrect this season while there's still time?
Well, I did make a couple notes here, so maybe some keys I think just to help them along the way. But just to note, this happens to the best of teams. When we beat the Red Wings in the finals in 2009, they had a 5-game losing streak that season. Actually, the Red Wings have already had a 5-game losing streak this season, and they're in the playoff picture in the West. So it's not a total loss right now, but the lost games, the last 5 games, 4-2, 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, and 5-1. And I think Bob Berry pointed out tonight the magic number is 3, and I think when the Pens score 3 goals, they're pretty good. The first thing I think they need to do is the top line, and particularly sometimes Malkin is trying to do a little bit too much, particularly on the power play. They're getting frustrated with not getting the puck in the zone, and they overextend their shift. That's led to a couple of shorthanded goals recently, and just real momentum killers for the game. I think Marc-Andre Fleury, he's been pretty good, but I think he needs to steal one. With the team struggling to score goals at this point, and the defense being so behind him, he needs to step up for his teammates and take one, whether it's going to be one of the next 3 games on the road. Hopefully he needs to do that. The other thing is, for the Pens, I'd say they need to find their toughness again, and not necessarily, dropping the gloves with somebody, but it seems like they've lost a little bit of the edge when they're grinding out their game in the offensive zone on the cycle, and just really haven't gotten any momentum from any physicality they've been involved with, and that needs to change.
Going back to what you said about the power play, it's an interesting observation because I believe that Bob Berry did say coming into this game, the Penguins were 0 for 18 on their last 18 power play chances, and certainly a few weeks ago we were, I believe, 5th overall in the league. Not even a few weeks ago. I think it was as short as possibly a week or a week and a half ago. And sometimes those stats can be misleading because James Neal had scored 10 of those power play goals. So pretty much at this point, James Neal has been our power play. Do you think there are any key acquisitions that Ray Shero may be looking at come the trade deadline and maybe boost this offense a bit?
I think so, and I hope so. I'm just checking some of the rumors that are out there. Supposedly the Pens were in on a top 6 forward before Jordan Staal got hurt, and I think the Pens could honestly, if you wanted to even bring in another D-man at this point, with Simon Dupre going down tonight, who knows how long he might be out. But they could really use help at pretty much all areas. You have Pascal Dupuis, not used to playing center on the second line. That's probably would be another key acquisition. Hindsight's 20/20, but I'm sure they'd like to have Mark Letestu back after they traded him away to free up a spot for Sid earlier this year. I believe he's got 10 points in 25 games with Columbus, but they don't have a ton of cap space to play with, and it depends if somebody goes on long-term IR for the rest of the year. That would definitely free up, some room to acquire a bigger gun, so to speak. But I think he's going to be working the phones. The only downside to that is teams know that Pittsburgh is a little bit desperate for help right now, so they're going to try to squeeze him. But we trust Shero. In Ray we trust. He hasn't gotten squeezed too many times.
And, certainly I read an article just a few days ago about how being vague about Crosby and Chris Letang, more so Crosby, is kind of a good business strategy for a savvy GM like Ray Shero, because if teams know that we're trying to replace Crosby for the season, should he be shut down, that's going to drive the price for a replacement through the roof. And so Ray Shero perhaps maybe thinking about that, maybe not. I mean, of course, he would never admit it if he was, but perhaps thinking about something like that. And certainly in order to pull ourselves out of the deep end here, we're going to need to get some scoring going, perhaps from some players not named Malkin or Neal. Here's a question. I'll give you 4 players to choose from, and you give me the one player that you think is most prone to trade talks. We're going to go with Tyler Kennedy, Brooks Orpik, Paul Martin, and Eric Tangradi. And by the way, fans, the reason I say Eric Tangradi, he's been the subject of trade rumors pretty much since he got to Pittsburgh. So out of those 4 players, which do you think might be most prone to a trade come the deadline?
I think heading toward the playoff teams, particularly playoff teams, are going to be looking to either add a D-man at some point, and whether that's the 7th defenseman or just to upgrade the top 4 pairings or shutdown pairing. Paul Martin hasn't played his best this season. He's been, he's rebounded from a really bad start, and he's been getting better. Unfortunately, he was ill tonight. I think Brooks Orpik, given his cap-friendly number, I think it's 3.75, and he's signed for a few more years. He might be the most tradable or asset that they have at this point. He would definitely garner the most in return, and whether that be a top 6 forward or a center, plus picks or a prospect, obviously, you don't think about that immediately. You need help now. But Brooks Orpik, he's great in the room. He's definitely a leader on this team. He could easily be a captain if we didn't have Sid on this team. That being said, he's probably closer to we've seen his best, I think, and it might be a good time to look to building differently through the core.
And Jason, tough question to consider always, and of course this is a little too early to maybe think of something like this, but you always got to be prepared. And if this losing streak swells to say 7, 8, 9 games in a row, and this is just the possibility, we're talking hypothetically, of course, here, even considering the injuries, do you think that Dan Bilesma begins to receive a nudge from Ray Shero at some point saying, hey, Dan, injuries understandable, but 7 or 8 games now and start producing some wins?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think his job is in jeopardy at all. Obviously, he's the reigning coach of the year, and the team was decimated by injuries, and he guided them to one of the top spots in the East last year. That being said, I think it's always we've seen last year, especially from the 24/7 show leading up to the Winter Classic, they have discussions after every game, and but I think Ray kind of he just to kind of pull a phrase from the Bill Parcells New England Patriots experience. Ray buys the groceries and he lets Dan Bilesma cook the dinner, so to speak. He said that over the years in the press, that whether that means Jordan Stahl plays a wing position or Malcolm plays a wing position or a center, and lineup questions. But I don't think his job would be definitely in jeopardy. But there could be some different strategy changes going forward. If the Pens are going to have to grind out another half season just to win 2-1 or 1-0 games, it's going to be pretty tough.
Absolutely, and certainly, hopefully, the Pens right the ship sooner rather than later if they want to get back into contention in this Eastern Conference. All right, well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, James Neal, the topic of conversation with his future with the Pens and his future contract. Stay tuned. Welcome back. James Neal has 21 goals, leads the team in goals, currently tied for 4th in the league overall in goals with Phil Kessel. A lot has been made about his play now that he's comfortable and well adjusted in Pittsburgh. One particular issue comes to mind with James Neal, and that is his contract, and it's up at the end of the season. I believe currently he's on pace to get 40-plus goals for the year. Let's start with this question. Is it better for Ray Shero to try to get a deal done right now rather than waiting until the end of the year?
That is a good question. I think Ray would probably, if you want to start negotiations and if it's a sticking point with the player and the agent. Maybe you can start them or even begin some conversations, but it's not necessary. I have read that his negotiations with Dallas previously coming out of his first contract were a little tenuous, which makes me a little bit nervous. But his price could skyrocket. That's the only danger in waiting to the end of the year. If he scores 40 to 45 goals, it'll be a little bit harder to get him to sign for the hometown discount on a long-term deal. So, but I think Ray will consider him one of the core players and get something done.
Absolutely, and at this point, he's well adjusted into the offense. And then, of course, coming off of what you said, turns us into the next question: what is he worth on a team with two players that are paid over $8 million, on a team with a lot of core pieces in place? Certainly, you would ask the question: well, is James Neal a core player on the Penguins? Does Ray Shero consider him one of the core players? And if that is the case, and if he is a core player at this point, what do you think his value might be?
Well, I think in general, riding shotgun next to Evgeny Malkin, he's looked good because of Gino. Gino's looked good because of him, and vice versa. They play very well together, and it's been evident so far this year. And we haven't seen him with Crosby yet, and that's a bridge across at another day. But I think he's 24. He's entering his prime. He's a 3-time 20-goal scorer. I think you have to consider him a core. He's probably the best winger the Pens have had in 10 years, maybe since the Kovalev prime days. So that being said, I think the ballpark is probably the Bobby Ryan deal is the one I kind of look at as sort of the watermark. Now, Bobby Ryan, before he signed this past year, he was a 3-time 30-goal scorer, and Neal has been close, but he has yet to score 30 in the league, and I think that'll happen this year. And Ryan got, I think, for 4 years, it was 5.1 and some change. I think James Neal likes Pittsburgh. I think he sees what he can accomplish here, and the guys in the room, and the full stands, and when healthy, this team what it can accomplish. So hopefully that kind of sits well with him. That being said, I probably would ballpark his deal at maybe 5 years, anywhere from 4 to 5 years, maybe at 4.5 to. Boy, if he scores 40+ goals this year, it'll probably take maybe a hair over $5 million per to get a deal done. And
you usually see teams that need to get to the cap floor every offseason, much like Florida and Buffalo were this past year, that will be willing to pay a guy like this an exorbitant amount. How much do you think James Neal would be worth as a free agent? Do you believe a guy like James Neal, and we see this a lot in other sports as well, would perhaps take less to play on a team that is win healthy, of course, a legitimate Stanley Cup contender year in and year out, playing with guys like Malkin, Crosby, and Letang?
I would hope so. I'm going to point to actually real recent comments. I believe it was this week by Zach Parise of New Jersey when they're talking about his negotiations, when he said, if he said money is a factor. Let's be human here. Let's be real. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a factor. He said, but at the end of the day, I want to see if this team is capable of winning a cup. And I think factoring that into everything. James, like I said, he's 224. If he signs a 4 or 5 year deal, he can still sign another good contract after that, and have him and his family be well taken care of. So I think he'd consider that. But you never know what some desperate teams will do. We saw Dustin Penner after the Ducks won the Cup, bolt for Edmonton, and the Sabres were forced to sign Thomas Vanek to over $7 million a year, thanks to the Oilers offer sheet. So if there's a desperate team out there, who knows what can happen? But like I said, I trust in Ray Shero to get something done with Neal and make him a part of the core for 4 or 5 years.
I'm going back to what you said about Zach Parise. Hey, Zach, if you find that New Jersey isn't working out for you, Pens fans would love to have you. I hear about you all the time. Certainly, I'm sure we could work something out if you wanted to come and join Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. And, of course, as James Neal goes, still have a half a season for James Neal to rack up those goals and add zeros after the decimal of his new contract. All right, folks, we're going to take a break. When we return, game predictions. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Some game prediction here for you. Wednesday night, the Pittsburgh Penguins will be going to Washington, D.C. to take on the Capitals in what is essentially a swing game. Of course, the Capitals won the first game in overtime. Penguins won the second game in regulation. That was back when we had Sidney Crosby back for that short 8-game stint. Now, again, without, the Caps seem to be heating up a little while, and certainly Ovechkin seems to be heating up. What do you think the Penguins' chances are of ending the losing streak against a surging Capitals team?
I like them a lot. This might be good for the Pens, having dropped a couple in a row at home, to get on the road and just forget about things back home a little bit. The Caps, since Dale Hunter's taken over, are 9-8. Not too great, but not horrible. Alex Ovechkin's played a lot better than he has earlier in the season, and he's beginning to score goals at a pretty good clip now. That being said, I think Evgeny Malkin always likes to play against his Russian rival, and the Pens and Caps, it's lost a little bit of it's the sizzle this year because Ovechkin hasn't been playing as well. Crosby's hurt. The teams aren't near the top of the East where they have been the past couple of years, but that being said, the Pens are going to be pretty desperate to come out of there with points, and I see them doing it tomorrow night, and I like it Florida to steal the show, 3-2 win.
And certainly it would be fantastic. That would be maybe one of the best teams to end the streak against. It'd kind of be a double whammy, revenge against the Caps, of course, always a hated rival, and end the streak at the same time. And then on Friday, we go from Washington, D.C. to sunny South Beach, Florida, where the Pens will take on the Florida Panthers. Kevin Dineen certainly has this team going, and finally, a front runner in the Southeast Division. Who would have guessed the Florida Panthers coming into this season? What do you like about the Pens and the Panthers matchup? Who do you see winning this one?
I dread the Pens when they go to Florida. I don't know if it's just the Florida weather or the teams they have to face on the ice, but recent history shows that they have not done all that well on this trip. And Florida's very hot right now. They have 3 really good lines. They can getting good goaltending, some young D that can hurt you from the blue line. I like the Pens to come out with a point in that game, but I see it maybe being in an overtime loss. I'll take Florida 3-2 in overtime.
And certainly Florida has been an incredible team this year, again, under Kevin Dineen. We saw Dmitry Kulikov a little bit in that Russia versus Sweden game. Certainly he's a fantastic young defenseman now, reunited with the Panthers after that whole tournament. So a lot of good games coming up for the Pens, and hopefully some wins, some W's, maybe some players recovering from injury, some updates perhaps on Letang and Crosby, and we will certainly keep you posted here at the Pens Iceberg. All right, folks, that's going to do it for our show this week. As always, we thank you all so much for tuning in. Jason, always a pleasure, and I can't wait to get right back here next Tuesday, hopefully talk about some Penguins victories.
Sounds good. Andrew Luck was in the stands at the Consol Energy Center tonight. Hopefully it brings the Pens some good luck, and we can talk about that.
How about that, Andrew Luck at the Pens game? All right. Well, everyone, we certainly thank you for tuning in, and we'll be right back here next Tuesday. From all of us here at the Pens Iceberg, have a fantastic night and a fantastic week.